Chopping would. Was good. Was good.
What up, Cave? Hey, yo. Fuck the judicial system.
I like that. Where are you going with that?
So, what up, y'all? Welcome. We're here today. This show's been out. This series has been out for a while. Making a Murderer. And then before I get into all that, I think there's 4 things that need to have no error or no kind of misleading when it comes to life, and that's our doctors, so medicine, our judicial system, our law enforcement, and any kind of science that has to deal with anything crazy in real life. Those are the things that I think that need to be accurate. They need to have real proof, and they need to show real signs of anything that's going on, whatever it may be, but there needs to be real. There's no room for mistake. Granted, nothing's perfect, but there can't be no room for mistake when it comes to anything like that, in my opinion. And this show really proved to me, and if anyone were to catch this, that's law enforcement. I have nothing against that, but just watching this show really made me think why a lot of wrongly convictions are happening. And I got a few other shows we can get into about that as we talk more about this. But I'd like to hear you first, since you have seen both parts, and I think you're more in depth in the first season. I'm just finishing the first season, or first part of it. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, and I could throw mine in.
Right. Yeah. So a couple things. Welcome back to the Choppin podcast. I've been trying to get you to watch Making Murder for a minute now, so I'm excited to finally delve into this. I have a lot of thoughts on the matter.
Real quick, you know what I thought you wanted me to watch? How to
Get Away with
Murder.
How to Get Away with Murder?
Yeah.
Which is a good show. Do you not watch
that? And I was like, damn, he wants me to watch 6 seasons of this.
Yeah. No, I actually stopped watching that after like season 4. I used to watch that when it would come on TV. Good show, not quite real life, but we'll get into that on another episode for sure. I've been clamoring for you to watch it. I've been wanting to chop it about this topic. Ooh, that's a bar for a track. I've been itching to talk about this because when the documentary first came out, it swept the nation, the world by storm. And I've seen the documentary multiple times, actually. It's a really good watch for me. And I've delved deep into the TikTok Manitowoc Reddit. If you guys are deep into Reddit. So we are going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it right now. Pause this, watch all 2 seasons, come back, unpause it, and then, we'll be right there. But no, so yeah, I'm excited to get into it. And also what you were talking about, the 4 things, our judicial system, those are objective things that should not be fucked with. You know what I mean? Objective. You need to, do things by the book. You shouldn't be railroading, an investigation or something outside of. There's protocols for a reason. And this series, I will preface this by saying, some people want to say it's slanted one side to the Stephen Averys, or the Averys who, it's the perspective, the POV is from their side, and they did give the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office and everything an opportunity to be a part of this documentary and to basically document the truth, because documentaries can be one-sided, they can have an agenda. And so some people online like to counter with like, oh, well, they're leaving out a bunch of stuff that, makes him look guilty, this and that. But again, TikTok Manitowoc Reddit goes really, really deep. There's a lot of crazy, intelligent, dedicated sleuths out there on that Reddit that has delved into every nook and cranny of this case. And then all the case files are, available online. So you could actually see all the witness testimony, and there is a lot that's left out of the documentary, obviously, because it's a huge case. But at the end of the day, one thing that is absolutely clear is the police had an agenda. and they fucked up the investigation a lot. Like whether you believe one side or the other, there was a lot of fucking negligence in this case, and it is astounding.
Oh, for sure. Hell, I like to start back in '85 when he first got convicted.
Yeah.
Like, they had no proof he was there. They went off a sketch drawing of someone who thought it may have been him, and someone just picked him out of a lineup because they didn't have the original guy that ended up getting time later.
Right.
So he served 18 years in prison, Stephen Avery.
Crazy.
The fucked up part about it is no one happened to get rid of, like, nothing happened to the police officers that they, that actually wrongfully committed him, and then he went to trial for everything. They had proof that they had timestamps that this guy was I think it was Green Bay, because if you don't know, this all said in Milwaukee. He was in Green Bay at the time, and what happened, like, I guess at the time the murder happened, it was still like 30-40 minutes away from his original house, which wasn't in Green Bay, but at the time the murder happened, he was somewhere in Green Bay.
The rape.
King.
The rape, yeah. I don't think there was a murder. Yeah, just to clarify.
Whatever. No, yeah. I'm sorry. No, it was the assault and the rape. That's what it was. And they had proof that he had been at Burger King and all this other stuff. And then he made stops at another yard place. And for y'all that don't know, his family owns a junkyard, or like a salvage land where they get car pieces, send them out, stuff like that. And yeah, like that, nothing happened to the police. And I think that needs to be held accountable. Like that, in my opinion, and we could see it in today's timing, like that and we might get flack for this, but certain things need to be held for accountability. I'll put it this way. I was telling my fiance this. If we got something wrong on a test, because a lot of these cops or not even cops, everyone that was being interviewed that was for the prosecution side, they kept saying maybe. You can't put maybe down on a test in real life in college. They're going to mark you wrong for that. So if we're going to go to school, go to get an education somewhere, and we're taught to be the best we can be and to put all our effort into getting the correct answer, there's no way our judicial system should have the right to go off a maybe, no matter who it is, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be doctors, whether it be, a church-going person that we want to believe in. There should be no room for a maybe. It has to be a correct answer. And if there's proof that we've seen that you've stated something, we need to go off that. But then again, this is kind of a double-edged sword where we get into Brennan, but we'll get into that a little later. But yeah, I do believe that something should have happened, and we shouldn't go off of a maybe.
Well, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that and maybe this is my own sleuthing, but I'm pretty sure it was in the doc that the woman who pointed out Stephen Avery in the lineup was shown the sketch, and I don't know if she saw Avery before, but they said, like, is that the man? Like, they basically coerced her into choosing Avery. Like, it wasn't like just straight up. I think she saw the sketch that looked like Avery or whatever, and then was it Gregory Allen? Was that his name? Who was
that was the guy. That's the guy who actually committed.
And he commit more crimes?
That's how they end up catching him later.
So it's ridiculous how that all came to be. And also, here's also I want to point out too, Stephen Avery has a history of not being the greatest guy on the planet, but that doesn't mean he murdered somebody, or that doesn't mean he committed rape and assault. And also, yeah, like you said, we're gonna just dismiss the facts that it couldn't have been possible for him to go to Green Bay and then drop off the rocks or whatever, hit a Burger King. Like, are we just going to dismiss that because we want to get our guy? Because what was it, like his cousin or some shit? He was being weird and sketchy to her, like perverted to her, whatever. And then she wanted revenge or something. Like, so he could be a bad dude. Don't get me wrong. But like, to throw him in jail for 18 years and he could, he was very adamant.
A longer sentence too.
Yeah, so when he gets out, then he's going to sue Manitowoc County for 30 mil, was it?
No, it was 36 million.
36 mil. That's 36 million reasons to not commit murder. So if we get to the point of talking about motive, what motive does he have to kill Teresa Halbach when Auto Trader, Teresa, his family, all knew she was going to be on the property? She goes missing. So, like, why would he commit? He has to be the dumbest criminal, and he doesn't pick up after himself either. So, where's all the DNA evidence? And there's so much to unpack here. Like,
and this is my thing with when it comes to when we see like serial killers, when we see documentaries on serial killers, they're actually pretty smart. They're pretty intellectual. They're pretty intelligent. Because in order for you to really commit that much of stuff, like I think we were talking, I forgot if we did, but I think we mentioned shortly of Richard Ramirez.
We did, yeah, Night Stalker.
Even how he looked like he didn't know nothing, or like for you to be able to commit as much murder as that he did, you have to be someone kind of smart to outsmart cops and detectives and stuff like that, which he did for quite a long time. Ted Bundy, everyone really loved, like, besides the killing, the women that fell for him because they all thought he was dreamy and all this other stuff. Hell, fucking Jeffrey Dahmer, just a long-going guy, but you have to be somewhat smart and intelligent to outfox people for quite a long time. You don't get that from this guy. He seems like a doof, which, just like a Midwestern bumpkin. No offense, that's what he seems like. And he doesn't seem like he knows much from much besides probably salvaging cars. That's probably all that's all he really knows, because he did spend a majority of his life in prison and probably didn't learn any trait. So that to me, you have to be somewhat of a serial killer to come up with the stuff they said he did. I think, like, to burn a body, I think you have to still be somewhat pretty smart. And for him to find no blood traces of anything when they said there was shot wounds and stab wounds and like blood from the rape, for you to get rid of that, you literally have to burn down the whole entire place or burn everything in his room, which he didn't, in order to get rid of any trace of that kind of DNA.
Well, and again, obviously, like, and I've delved into this case deeper than just the doc. So, like, some of the stuff I've read about and heard about, it just raises question after question after question, about the DNA evidence, about the official timeline that the prosecution wanted to accept. Like, basically, there's no evidence that she was ever in the trailer, ever. But yet they want to hold a fucking press conference before the trial about the fucking mass murder that happened, the rape murder in his bed. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's not corroborated by any evidence at all that she was ever in the trailer, that she, like, how do they know? So they know she was shot because they found skull fragments with a bullet wound in it or whatever. But there's also, they don't even know if the actual remains were hers, because, and you'll find this out in season 2, but they didn't let the coroner or whatever on site. They literally said, you can't come. And she ended up like getting threats and then like quitting her job. But she's like, she had the power to actually like arrest the sheriff or whatever, because if there's a murder investigation or a murder remains found, she actually had priority or whatever over him. And they literally like gave her the runaround and said, like, you're not allowed on the property. Just so much, just malfeasance. Why was Manitowoc County law enforcement even on the property at all? Calumet County, at all.
During that kind of a lawsuit, especially with 36 million,
man,
and they were advised to not be there, or if they were, they needed a supervisor to watch them.
So they have a complete conflict of interest. Everyone on the planet understands that. And who finds a lot of the smoking guns? Detective Lank. He's on the property every time something crazy is found. He happens to, I believe, live in Arizona. If we want to try to get him on the pod, he's like a retired dude who lives out here. If you're watching this, Lank, not a big fan.
Fuck you.
Yeah. So there's so much, just like, so much of the evidence is just fucking ridiculous, in the sense that they found the key in his room. See, this is why I think, regardless if he did it and they didn't have enough evidence, they planted shit to some degree.
For sure.
Even if they're like 110% convinced that Stephen Avery did this and we have to get him, so like we have to plant something to get that smoking gun. Why why was the spare key in his room and not the actual keys? Why was only his DNA found on the spare key and not her DNA? Which it's her fucking key. Where's her DNA? So it's little questions like that. As a juror, how do you convict someone with all those fucking questions? You know?
Oh, for sure. And
whoa.
So not just to knock law enforcement, but the chemist, she really pissed me off because
was that the blonde lady with the oh my gosh.
She really pissed me off because not just because her smiling face, maybe she was nervous and that's how she deals with her nerves, but
could be.
What pissed me off with her was that she sneezed during the time they were using a buffer to try to extract DNA. That pissed me off because any fucking freshman lab that you're gonna take in college, hell, maybe even high school, they're gonna tell you it could be contaminated, so be careful.
Right.
And for this, and it goes to my point where there's 4 things that you can't get wrong or you can't have misleading evidence. With that, because she sneezed in the buffering solutions for them when they extract the DNA, they never I want to say they never excluded her, or they never reran the test again for anything else. She just assumed that it'd be okay and just write it down, but never ran a test again.
Ridiculous.
So I don't that really pissed me off because you're not supposed to do that. First of all, you're supposed to know if you're gonna do something like that, you have to wear some kind of facial protection. She said that, I was teaching 2 other kids or 2 other trainees at the time. So what? That doesn't matter. That if you're in a situation, I've never been in a homicide laboratory before, but I'm assuming it's the same protocols as anywhere else, especially when it has to do with DNA samples. You have to be careful. And that's why I don't get how she didn't lose her job. I hope she had lost her job after this. But yeah, that really pissed me off.
And this is your expertise. So yeah, like you can definitely, you have the right to an opinion that really matters here. And especially when you're training other people, you should be going by the absolute book. No, I mean, so like, okay, you sneeze, let's say it's a complete accident, there's no, ill intent or whatever, then wouldn't you assume you would redo the tests or whatever? Like you would do something to just combat the fact that now you just messed it up potentially. Even if you didn't, you should, again, like you said, the protocols. And so that woman really pissed me off because also she knows that I think she was kind of fishing specifically for the state to like get his DNA or something like that.
Oh no, for sure.
So she had an agenda.
Yeah.
And that really pissed me off too, because that should be completely third party. You have no intent. It's an objective testing. And she had an objective which was subjective in trying to get DNA.
And technically when you're a crime scene laboratories or scientist, you're considered still a cop. You know what I'm saying? You're still considered someone of a law enforcement. I don't think you can arrest anybody, but you're still considered a cop.
Or you work for them, basically.
Exactly. And then so when they got the FBI involved for the blood sample that they found that had a hole in the vial,
man,
that's when I was like, they're not going to come back with the result that they probably should have. And in my opinion, I was like, yeah, there was evidence that someone tampered with the box and they stuck a needle in there through the vial, and there was a hole. So I don't see how when they brought the FBI in, how there wasn't going to be, we found no evidence of there being, I forgot, I think it was ETMA. Inside for the blood, because it's just to keep it fresh and keep it still in its hemoglobin state. So I had a feeling that's what was going to happen. They weren't going, FBI and law enforcement, granted, maybe they don't get along whenever there has to do a case that coincides with each other, but they're always going to back each other.
Yeah.
Because they are law enforcement. They are,
it's a gang.
Thing. Exactly. So I had a feeling that was just, they were going to say no. There was no evidence of that. And it was his blood from the start. But like, in my opinion, those were just 2 small bloods. If he really shot this woman, he stabbed her up, there'd be way more blood than the little bits that they found. I'm assuming. And even if he did clean it, you could still find blood. Like just because you clean it with Clorox, which Clorox doesn't help clean blood at all, for anyone that doesn't know that, it's just going to leave blood and Clorox.
Right.
Like you're still going to, and then if there was Clorox, you're going to assume, oh, so you killed somebody, because that's the most common thing that we've seen whenever people try to clean blood.
What's that black light luminol, or what's it called?
Yeah.
Like that shows blood even if it's been cleaned up.
Exactly.
Like even if it's not there anymore. Like you can't just get rid of the blood like that easy.
Oh,
and
exactly.
So I appreciate all the like forensic files and shit for teaching us that. But so yeah, like law enforcement can see if there were remnants of blood in the past.
Oh, for sure. So that's just where in my mind I was like, they got this case won for Stephen Avery. But once I figured they had and even the lawyers said it for Stephen Avery, they were like, once they get the FBI involved, because they didn't run the test, like the FBI even stopped running those tests, they said, for like 10 years at the time.
Yeah.
So they figured that they just had, in my opinion, there should have been a third party that wasn't a law enforcement place, was just a third party that had no biases to this case, that it could have done it. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I'm not saying it would have been easy, but I'm pretty sure it could have took some time. They could have found someone to do it. The reason the FBI, I think, stepped in also was that they said that it could take up to 6 months, but they could have done it in like a week.
Yeah.
And obviously I knew once they said, oh, it's going to get done in a week. I mean, who even knows if they even did the test? We don't know.
That's what exactly. And that's it. Just who knows how crooked this goes all the way to the top? Because again, in the end of the day, they wanted to get Stephen Avery. They had a conflict of interest in the sense that they wanted him off the streets. They didn't want to have to open up this huge can of worms. And so they had one suspect from the beginning, and let's get enough evidence or whatever to convict Stephen Avery. They didn't go down the leads of all these other, not saying they didn't do any police work. I'm not saying that. Not every single cop in Calumet or Manitowoc is completely crooked, but they clearly didn't take a look at other suspects that deeply. They literally wanted Stephen Avery the whole time. And how they found the car on the salvage yard. So so Stephen Avery is, like you said, not the smartest, not the brightest crayon in the box. When you have a salvage yard and you have a fucking car crusher on your fucking yard, and you just
would use that.
Use it. You had like multiple days to use it, and he just is gonna put like twigs and like things. Oh, and like also too when the fucking boyfriend, who is extremely shady to me.
So do you think he killed her? Because I think him or the brother killed her.
So I personally, with the new news that came out, I think it's someone else, and maybe we'll get to that. But I think her boyfriend, there's so much sketchiness that comes from this because he leads the charge on like, we got to find Teresa. Him and her brother were like awkwardly, like weirdly in the moment, like to try to capture all the spotlight, like to talk to reporters and all that. And that's kind of weird to me as well. But how did they get into her phone? First off, they guessed her password. And I think you'll see in season 2 they go deeper into the forensics of things.
Yeah, because real quick, like,
yeah,
it's real fresh and I just saw it. The phone thing was kind of skipped over really quickly. Like we did it, they probably went over it maybe like two days.
Yeah,
through the trial, but that was skipped over real quickly, and they really thought that he had the intelligence or like just knew her password and read and deleted fucking voicemails.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think they did touch on it in the doc. They said like to have known or whatever, like someone had to have deleted her voicemails at one point. And we're just gonna like forgive that. Like, and maybe here's the thing, and I don't know if he did it or not, and maybe he wanted to delete some voicemails or whatever, or because he didn't want people to think he killed her. Maybe they got in a big fight and then the person dies the next day or goes missing, and like you look guilty as hell. Could have simply been his motive to like make sure it didn't come back on him, whether he killed her or not. So like, I don't want to necessarily point the finger at that slime bucket, but he was taking advantage of the spotlight super awkwardly. And then they fucking asked him, they're like, so when's the last time you saw her or whatever? And he's like, it was
Sunday.
yeah. And it's like, well, was it daytime? Was it nighttime? I don't remember. It's like, how the fuck don't you remember if it's nighttime out or not? You know what I'm saying? Like,
and that goes to my thought of saying you can't go off of I don't know, because you do know. And
right.
because so this is what pissed me off when they were, asking witnesses questions. They were quick to say, oh, I can't recall, that was so long ago. But when they caught them in the lie after they reported like a recording of them, all of a sudden they remember everything, because obviously you can't get caught up in the lie now.
Yeah.
So you can't use I don't know no more if we just showed you. Like there was an instance, one of the cops, like, so I let's kind of get into it right now. Brennan, I'm finishing the last episode of the first part, and they're redoing his getting him to have his child redone again, because his first lawyer just kind of gave up on him.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and he even stated something, I forgot what the lines were towards, but they replayed the exact recording. He said, no, I don't recall saying that because that was just too barbaric. But then they replayed the recording of him saying everything they quoted word for word, and they saw it. And then all of a sudden now he remembered everything of what happened that day and how it went. So that's my whole thing. You can't go off of maybe because they have evidence. There's evidence. Everything had evidence. And if it's in a written document, so if we're going to have written documents of saying an agreement for something, a contractual agreement, and we say, oh, I don't remember that, you just put that in there. No, you signed it. And off the paperwork, you signed off that. So now you're saying that all this is just fake, whether it was 15 whatever years ago in any situation. And in this case, it was only 2 years ago when the trial happened from 2005 to 2007. That's not okay. You can't just say you forgot when there's documentation saying that it happened.
Yeah, when you give a testimony like the week of the incident, and then you sign an affidavit or something, and like they have you on record of your account, and then if that account doesn't fit with the narrative that you want later, you say, I don't remember, well, we have you saying it. But the whole Brendan Dassey's lawyer, Len Kaczynski, my fucking goodness, how do you railroad a client so much, or a fucking client so much to where you have an investigator try to extract basically a testimony that puts Stephen Avery, that makes Stephen Avery guilty. Like, they were working for the state, and
for sure.
His mom's never in the room almost on any occasion that he's whether it be by his lawyer, whether it be by Detective Wiegert or Fassbender. And I've watched the Brendan Dassey interviews. I've watched the ones that were not video recorded but just audio. For me, I don't know how someone also, well, okay, before I say that, they didn't show the very end of the interview at his trial
at all,
like, where he says like
they a whole hour.
Yeah, like they got to my head. She's like, well, did you do anything? He's like, not really. Well, what if my story doesn't match up with his? And she's like, well, why did you tell him that, Brandon? He's like, I don't know, they got to my head. They don't show that to the jury, but they show the whole thing where he's saying I stabbed her, I raped her, all this stuff, which there's no corroborating evidence to that. So for me, it's frustrating as hell to see him be railroaded by his attorney, which was like thrusting the spotlight. He's smiling again, like we talked about. Like, some people handle like awkwardness or adversity, like they'll laugh or giggle or whatever. And he's like smiling, like, oh my gosh, I'm like on TV. This is the case of my career. And he completely just railroaded the kid, because the state needed something on Stephen Avery and they needed this witness. And what boggles my mind, probably more than anything, is how Stephen Avery and Brendan were both found guilty basically to two different crimes. Like, either they raped and murdered her in the room and they both are guilty of that, or that never happened. And Brendan gets, like, just off of his testimony alone, basically put in jail for life because of something that he said that never actually happened. and then Stephen Avery gets put away because of the circumstantial evidence or whatever against him. How do you convict one? Either they're both true or they're not true at all.
Especially if you're putting them at the same place at the same time.
Right. And they're the only people who can alibi themselves, so to speak. But yeah, so Brendan Dassey, I just, free Brendan Dassey. That's my guy. We need to get him to WrestleMania. Yeah. So
when he said that, I felt so bad for the kid. Like, and at the time he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
So bad for him because he's like, well, I won't be able to have time to watch WrestleMania, and he's 16. So to put it in perspective, this kid read at a 4th grade level as a, let's say, sophomore, junior in high school at the time.
Yeah.
So he's not too bright. He even said, like, just when you hear him speak, he doesn't sound like he's all there, not mentally, but intellectual wise. He's not all. Right. He couldn't hold a deep conversation with somebody. Mm-hmm. Literally, all of his answers led to "I don't know," no matter what they asked him. But when they first originally asked him about what happened, he told the truth and word for word what he was doing. They just didn't want to hear what he was doing.
They coerced his ass into fucking. I'm just gonna come out and say, who shot her in the head? He did. Well, why didn't you tell us that, Brendan? I couldn't think of it. Who on fucking earth would believe that after he said it? After Wiegert comes out and say, okay, who shot her in the head, or whoever's Fassbender? I'm just like, who? And then they act like, well, that practice of interviewing somebody or whatever that they did it by the book. Bullshit.
And so the family's not, like I said, Stephen Avery's not the brightest bunch, like brightest crayon. His family. No one in his family is really that, they're not all there intellectually either. Which is that happens. I mean, you just situations, family, that just happens. They kind of come from poverty, but they end up building themselves a nice little business with the salvage. Oh, cool. But they're not all there. The mom isn't all there either, like as far as like trying to understand any of what's going on.
You're talking about Brendan's mom, Barb?
Yeah, and she wants him to tell the truth, but I don't think she sees what's going on. Not to mention, they're not telling the mom that what's happening in these interviews, because in all reality, you don't have to. But he's a minor, but they're treating him like he is. So I don't know if in Wisconsin you could be treated at 16 or older as an adult. I don't know that.
I believe they are supposed to, at the very least, ask the parent if he can be interviewed by himself.
So that's what I'm saying. I just don't know the ins and outs that if 16 is considered as far as in a homicide case, if you're considered an adult when you're being tried. I don't know.
As far as I know from the research I've done,
right,
you are considered a minor and you should have an adult present.
Okay, because they're already charging him with like prison time. They weren't charging him with juvenile hall. They were charging him with prison. So that was my whole thing with that. So if he is considered a minor, from what I just kind of understand, you're supposed to have a parent present. You're not supposed to just question this child, but like they didn't. That's where the coerce comes in. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But the mother didn't know. I don't think the mother thought in her head, we need to get a lawyer. And just by saying that, from what I also understand, I don't know how true this is, but if you say, I need to see my lawyer, they're going to stop questioning you because they're going to get, even if it's just an appointed lawyer from the courthouse or from the courthouse or whatever, you're going to get a lawyer and they'll stop questioning you. But no one really thought to say that. Maybe they did, they just didn't show it. But I'm gonna just let this be known to anyone. If you're ever in this kind of situation or any kind of situation, get a lawyer. And even if they say, well, you'll look like a guilty person if you get a lawyer, I'd rather look guilty and be free than look innocent and end up maybe possibly going to get locked up because I don't have a lawyer.
Exactly, 100%.
Definitely get a lawyer no matter what, or ask for a lawyer. But no, I felt bad for the kid, 16 years old. The kid, he looked like he just really didn't get along with people. Like, he didn't seem like to himself, shy kid, So I did feel bad for him, and I don't think he deserved any of what happened. Like, it really was coerced for his whole situation of how it went.
Yeah, well, and my thing too is, I think on one of the phone calls, he asked his mom, like, what does this mean? something simple, and she's
It
like,
was no, oh, damn it.
you know what I'm talking
I was
about?
talking about. Yeah. It was interference, I think.
See, he said something, and she's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like,
And
how
it
do
was
you?
like, I wish I could think of the word. It was a real simple, common word, and
Yeah,
know what it meant. Um, and it just sucked, like, to see that situation for a 16-year-old kid who now doesn't get out. Supposed to, or he was sentenced to life, and in 2048 he's given parole. And like you said, there's new evidence that brought up. I haven't seen the second part yet, but what was that? That's exactly what he's going through right now.
yeah, and yeah, it's heartbreaking. Also, too, in that interview that got the play in the doc where he's like, Uyghur comes back in like, hey, Brendan, you hungry? You want a sandwich or anything? And he's like, no, when can I go home or something like, or when are we gonna be done? He's like, why, you got something somewhere to be? Or he's like, yeah, I got a test in like 4th hour or 6th hour or something like that. It's like his mind. He just confessed to murder, rape, assault, everything, and then he's like, oh, but I have a test. Like, does that not bring up some red flags to the detectives? Like, okay, maybe this kid's not all there. Um, I can't. He's like, oh yeah, well we'll worry about the test later. It's like his mind doesn't work like that of someone his age, and for the detectives to be able to take advantage of him like that, I know there's techniques and stuff when interrogating somebody, but to take advantage, man, it's just crushing to watch. And
Like I
I don't
said,
know.
yeah.
I don't know how anyone can justify their behavior, and let alone, I mean, they justify it, but it's and then again, I don't even think they end up using his testimony to convict Stephen Avery in the end. Like,
No,
it's
at all.
so it's like all that was literally he just implicated himself for literally no reason.
Well, you got to remember they dropped 2 charges because originally they were going to give Stephen Avery 6.
Yeah.
3 charges because then he ended up just taking 3. So he was only guilty for 2, but he was innocent for 1, and they gave Brendan the 3 other ones.
And then I think Brendan and whatnot, they concocted the story of he read about it in the book and stuff. Like, again, like, and they don't have money to really get good lawyers. I don't think even Stephen Avery's lawyers, Dean Strang and Gary Buting, I don't think they're bad lawyers. I think they were under a time constraint for sure. They didn't have the resources available now.
In my opinion, they were fucking good at what they were doing. I think they had prosecution everywhere in the corner. Like every time they kept bringing up, they said they had strong DNA evidence. There was none. All you was the bone fragments, and that was it.
Which were found in multiple burn barrels, not just on Stephen Avery's property.
And like I said, I don't think there's, just from seeing this, he doesn't seem like a mastermind of crime.
Right.
So you would think the first thing to, I'm not going to say anything, but this is all hypothetical. You would think to put the body in the car, crush the car if you had a car crusher right there.
Right.
What would be the smartest thing to do?
Well, and also too, you can't even
mind like that.
You can't even burn a body in a burn barrel. Like, it's not hot enough to burn everything that you need to burn. That's what they've, like, the actual like science behind it says. And I think it was Scott Todick, Brendan's stepdad, says he saw flames super high, but then he had said, the flames weren't that high. But regardless, it wouldn't have burnt at it. Like, it's not it's not going to cremate a body in a burn barrel. And I don't know why people like the sleuths online and stuff have literally said you can't burn through certain things in just an open burn barrel like that. Like,
you can't. Yeah.
So I don't know why. And also, how do you explain the bone fragments being on the Dassey burn barrel and in the quarry? So did he like just go and take bones after the fact and put them in? I mean, there's so much reasonable doubt here that if I was a juror, I could not convict him of murder.
Yo, the fucking bullets. They found 23 shells or 20 or maybe even 40 some shells. Well, I forgot how much it was, but they found shell casing. Obviously, they're in a junkyard. They're in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
In like Midwestern bumpkin. So they're gonna go out and shoot some shit. I mean, hell, I think the Brennan's older brother said they were going out hunting that day. Not all of them, but him and a friend, his brother and friend, were going out hunting. So there's gonna be shell cases, but none of them led. There was no blood. Where did they? They didn't find blood. They said they found blood underneath the fucking garage, like under a sheet rock. They said because it could have soaked in the rock. I've never once heard of blood soaking in a rock. Maybe that's true. I've never heard of it. I've never seen the shit. That must be some really good rock for it to soak up some blood.
Well, and look how filthy that place was. It's not like, oh, like there's this spotless part right here, or anything. Like the whole place was filthy.
And they said if you were to shoot someone, the blood would have definitely splattered, and to clean up all that, you'd have to really clean everything in there.
Yeah, and like not everyone's seen Dexter, but blood splatters, like little specks of blood, and they don't find any trace of that in a sense. And like also, the bullet that they did find, the smoking gun bullet, was outside of the shell casings and stuff that they found on the property, was found on like the 9th day or whatever, the search. Like it wasn't, and it was found under like a generator.
It wasn't in the place they looked at before.
Yeah, so I just don't. Okay, so if you piece together every little thing and then you want to try to fit it, the square peg in a round hole narrative, then I guess the jurors either A, wanted to go home, or B, just were that gullible. But again, like he was guilty before. He never had a chance in a sense because that damn
already guilty. Like, dude. And I get it. Obviously there was, they didn't want to pay him $36 million. They didn't commit to saying that they were wrong and convicting him 20 some years prior for a murder, for an assault that never happened. So I get it. Your reputation as a department is on the line. And if you do that, now we're gonna have to start digging into more cases that might have happened and have false convictions. So I get it, but that's wrong. We're supposed to have trust in our, and we can see with the time we're going through right now that our judicial system does not give a fuck about what it may be. So it's just bad. I can't wait to get into the second part, but no, it's just crazy how all that shit is still happening today, and they're still trying to figure out. If you said like there's more evidence that came up, they're still trying to figure out some shit. I really do hope that they do get out and they leave this guy alone. It's just crazy.
If he ends up getting out, this dude deserves like $500 million. I mean,
and he needs to go somewhere. He should go somewhere and not stay there at home. Just leave. Just go. Go somewhere where you can't be messed with no more, and just be at that. And as far as the kid goes,
it's sad.
He's 2 years older than I think we are, so he's probably 31, 32.
Yeah.
And literally half of his life right now has been spent in prison.
It's crazy.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that going into my 30s soon. I couldn't imagine that being that your half of your life. That's what you know. And he didn't even graduate high school. He, like I said, he read at a 4th grade level, so he really wasn't all there. Just poor kid, poor situation that happened to him. And imagine how it was back then, like just us growing up and like the stuff, how the environment was, and look at it now. He's gonna be so lost. If he didn't understand shit then, he's definitely not gonna understand it now.
Yeah, it's gonna, even if he does, get out on parole, the world's gonna be so different. I just read about a case where a dude, he was put to death, lethal injection in 2017, after like 20 years of basically saying I'm innocent this whole time, and then this year they found DNA of someone else on the murder weapon, and what the fuck? You know what I mean? So like it's a shame, and I want to end this one here because I do want you to see season 2 before I delve super into what I really think happened, because obviously I think we've alluded to, like, I don't think they did it in a sense.
Right.
And there are some really nice forensic moments in season 2. It's a little slower. It's kind of more about the, post-conviction process and how they're dealing with things and stuff. But Kathleen Zellner, Stephen Avery's attorney, has really delved real man hours into figuring out what the hell happened. And her main goal is to get him a retrial, which is to basically make poke holes into the state's timeline and also finding a new suspect that at the very least, whether they did it or not, I think it's there's a name for it in Wisconsin, but you they weren't allowed to basically say someone else could have done this or did this, but like so Strang and Buting didn't have like that wasn't their defense. Their defense was saying that like the cops planted evidence. But Zellner is again, there's this one thing, and you'll see it in season 2 where she needs to find someone else that could have possibly done it to create reasonable doubt. Right. And there's some, in my opinion, some absolute bombshells in season 2 that like again, Buting and Strang never would have even been privy to, especially under the time crunch and like the lack of man hours, and they don't have all the resources, especially years later, and you know, the internet and everything. So I want you to watch season 2. I'm glad you finally got in it. I've been waiting to have this conversation for a long time, so I've been able to get a lot of stuff out. But it's crazy. At the very least, I think there's one thing you have to say, whether if you believe they did it or they didn't do it, is that the negligence by law enforcement is atrocious in this case.
Before we go, I need to say this, which we didn't mention on. There was a 7-3 split that he was Stephen Avery was innocent
initially.
Yeah, and then for some reason they kept dragging it on, and so there was a juror that had to leave due to a health emergency. Mm-hmm. He said, everyone thought he was going to come out innocent. Then all of a sudden it just switched and changed really quick that he was guilty.
Yeah.
So this is my whole thing with jurors and, judges. I still don't see who gives those people the right to determine who's guilty or not guilty. I get it. We need judge and jury. It is what it is. But if you look at the Salem witch cases, how they used to determine who was a witch, who wasn't a witch. Granted, I think maybe our legal system somewhat grew from back then. Mm-hmm. It really used to determine if people were witches if they drowned in the water and didn't float back up after they tied them to cement or they burned them.
That's crazy.
Because people would say that they believed that this what it was. And if they said, well, if they come out of it, then they're witches. But if they don't, well, then it is what it is. We're sorry. They didn't make up for it. So that's my whole thing with judges and juries. Because there was even some people saying, like the 3 that did it, they were already set on their minds, were set that he was guilty. There was no way to persuade him that they already said that he was guilty. And that's what the juror that left said, that they already thought he was guilty from the beginning. Then there was no way to vent. They had people from another county come in and be the jurors. Mm-hmm. I just don't agree with any of that. I don't know who gives, I don't even know. Like, and me, I always try to come in any situation with a clear mind and clear head, whatever it may be. So I can imagine in a situation like that, if you truly believe that he wasn't guilty, you have to stick. I'd say stick to your guns. Don't let someone try to persuade you if you truly believe that. But it seems like a bunch of people were persuaded. But real quick, if you want to get into this topic real quick, have you seen confession tapes?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen confessions of the confession murderer?
No, but I think I've seen the thumbnail, but I haven't seen it.
So literally what happened here is what's happening in those two. The confession murder and confession tapes aren't the same thing, but they're about getting someone and convincing them that they actually did the murder.
Really?
Tapes literally has confessions from each situation that these innocent people killed these people and how they coerced Brennan. That's exactly how they're talking to them.
Is it so? One's a series, right? An episodic thing.
Yeah, they both are series, but okay. Yeah, they're both about series. But then the confession murderer is about a guy who may have committed one murder, but he took the rep for like 900 murders in Texas, and he never did any of them.
Was it the dude with like messed up teeth?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah.
seen that one where he was like, I'm just gonna be responsible for all of them, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
And he
so
was
I've
the
seen that one.
coolest dude. Like he had
Yeah.
those like, and he even seemed like not a mastermind. Like to commit 900 murders is because the Texas Rangers had some kind of issue. Like that's why they had such a high. Like they had so many deaths. They didn't know how to catch. So this guy just took the rap for him.
Yeah.
Gave him,
Weren't they giving him like cigarettes or like food and stuff? Shout out to the fiance. Hey, cameo appearance.
I love you.
But weren't they giving him like snacks and like free time and
they gave him anything he wanted.
Just to
stay in the jail. He stayed in like someone's house.
That's crazy. I remember watching that.
So just that, if that happened in those situations, and we have confession, I don't know how confession tapes isn't a bigger thing, but really they have sound bites of people and recordings of people literally confessing the crimes that they didn't do, and they got them locked up, and then they end up eventually getting them acquitted. And just to bring back to Making a Murderer with Stephen Avery, you easily saw they were trying to coerce him to believe, and he did. He kept saying, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And then there was a part where the interrogator was like, oh, so you just didn't plan on doing this. He's like, no. He's like, oh, so you didn't plan on doing this. He's like, I didn't do it.
Right. Like, yeah, no, they're slime balls. And I get they have an agenda. They need, people will lie, you push them. There's interrogation tactics for sure. But if someone's adamant over and over and over and over, and then you're going to keep them in the room, it's sort of like the was it the 5 African American kids in New York?
From New York, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Have you seen that doc or that miniseries?
I haven't seen. I know what you're talking about though, but I've kept up with it. But yeah,
When They See Us, I believe it's called. That series, obviously based on a historical truth, was crazy. Yeah. It was bananas. And these are kids, and
they coerced them too to think that they actually did this.
Well, and also too, they coerced them to saying that their friends are telling them that they did it. So they pitted them against each other too. You know what I mean? And like, was it the Central Park 5? That's what it's called.
There we go.
But it was the shows When They See Us or whatever. So you should watch that if you haven't. Obviously, it's very relevant, sort of what's happening today as well. But for people to think that you can't, as an innocent person, admit to something, being guilty of something, it happens. Try being locked in a room for hours and hours and hours, especially those of them with sort of low IQs or a lack of knowledge of how things work. Yeah, or a kid. Yeah, so like
who's scared. Yeah.
Luckily, I've seen documentaries, forensic files, movies, shows. Like we kind of have. I'd say the common person sort of knows that like you need a warrant to go in someone's house, and someone's saying this and that. Like like get a lawyer. You don't have to say anything that's going to incriminate you, because you never know what the agenda of cops and law enforcement. You never know. So you should go by your own protocols as well, and just rather be safe than sorry as much as you can.
No, for sure.
So, but I want to get into a part 2 at some point.
For sure. I'm definitely gonna catch the rest of this, and we're definitely gonna get back into it.
And there are some absolute kaboom bombshells in season 2 and after season 2, which I'm just super giddy to get into. Free Brandon Dassey. This was arguably, biasedly, this is my favorite Choppin' Wood episode so far.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, all that other good shit. And tell us what kind of topics you guys want us to talk about.
Second that. But also go watch Making a Murderer if you haven't already. It's bananas.
But we don't really give a fuck because this is our podcast.
I don't give a fuck if you watch it or not, because you're gonna get the spoilers here on another episode as well. But yeah, and then also don't confess to something you haven't done. Just don't do it.
Get a lawyer. Just look guilty and be a free man. Get a lawyer.
Yeah. So yeah, tune in on the next one. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Free Brandon Dassey. Keep on chopping.